Well, hello. Welcome to the Friends of Zeus podcast. First of all, let me get the business out of the way. First of all, you can find us at Friends of Zeus podcast on Facebook, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, and Rumble, all under the same name. Tonight we wanted to. I'm sorry. And of course, YouTube and Facebook, if I didn't say Facebook already.
You did.
Well, anyway, tonight we've often talked about this, but we wanted to go a little further, a little deeper dive into this. The topic of over the past few years, we'll call it maybe 5, how so many terms and words are being changed, and there's not only there are new definitions, but there's new words that we're still kind of struggling to grasp. Some of them do fall into the gender-based definitions, but there's other ones like one, for instance, is you're no longer are you allowed to call somebody homeless. It's now, I believe, unhoused, which the difference I do not see. I don't know how many homeless people I've run across that, unhoused individuals that I've run across that seemed to have their label be an important aspect of their life. So that being said, I did want to just kind of go into that. There's a lot of things right now, like where we're at this point right now where you have to stop and consider what you're saying at the risk of offending somebody. And I know we've quoted him before, but I'm personally of the attitude that Jordan Peterson has of, if you don't risk offending somebody, then you're just going to stop thinking. We're going to become stagnant, where it's just going to be flat water, stuff growing on it, ugliness. And I happen to agree with that. Now, in the case of certain people that meet the criteria, I'm far more about it. But for instance, with gender, and I'm going to say this as kindly as I possibly can, gender has been changed into something else. There's 2 genders. I mean, as far as I was ever raised to think, and now the last I heard, there's 62 different identifications for gender. One of them being the one that we were just looking at, and we'll go over a list later. That one being cisgender, which essentially just means, heterosexual that sympathizes with people being offended, is what I gather from it. You guys looked at the list as well. What did you think?
Yeah, it's a very broad topic. I mean, talking about, the language and what you said, Zeus, as far as this noticeable shift and change, which again has happened before in different societies. It's just happening to us now, as far as having like the language, the control of the language taken and directed a certain way. There's a couple examples of this that started, really in earnest, I think in the late 90s. Obviously it started before then, but what we used to call political correctness. And really what it is, it's a set of these arbitrary, in my view, rules that are set forth that really serve to squelch speech, because people feel like they're walking through a rhetorical minefield when they're just trying to get a point across. And people who promote this are said to take offense, to certain words, to the point where it obfuscates actually getting to ideas right? So they don't even, you can't even get to the thought or the idea because you trip over the terminology. And you
And that's
saw,
what I was going to say.
yeah,
It stunts communication. One might even wonder if to a certain degree, this is kind of one of my choreography arguments of that, to throw this into the social communicative arena. It makes you, gender is a huge part of language, like look at Spanish, you got the at the end or the o at the end. One means female, one means male.
Mhm.
We do similar things in English and many other languages. And messing with gender actually is huge from a language based perspective. You have to reassess whatever you're saying, and hopefully you say it in the right manner. And if you don't, then there's another stunt to the communication process, because now you may have offended somebody, or in the from the other side, somebody may offend you because they don't address you in the proper way. To be fair, I do believe that a lot of these people are actually, they're truly offended, and maybe they've been offended for a while, and now it's just coming out. Or perhaps that's the egg, or that's the chicken, and this is the egg. And until this change in language came along, nobody maybe had these problems. These are like newly developed problems, the origin within the last 5 to 10 years. Just a consideration. I don't know.
Do you believe that people are offended, Jack?
Do I believe that people are offended?
Yeah.
I think nowadays they've created a new language system, and if you're not part of it, then you're part of the old guard. And I think there may be a lot of feigning being offended, but I think now it's actually kind of dug roots. I think you have a whole new generation that's practically raised on this stuff, because that's the problem. It's crate training.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't just getting out the old guard. It's making a whole new way of thinking and a whole new language that's there in place for your new, let's say, kindergartners, first graders, and second graders. That's kind of a big issue going on right now, which maybe that's another podcast.
Yeah.
But I think that, if you're part of a certain generation, you're expected to do a lot of cleaning up of your language. Like, I remember the first time I heard the term microaggression, and I thought it was silly, and it actually made me laugh. I was watching a show called Wang's World, and it was this travel show, and it was this Asian guy, Asian American, young guy, pretty, affable guy. He would travel around the world, and he was visiting New England. And at some point they saw like a triple.
Well, that's a bad place to get all touchy-feely about your words.
Well, no. So he's on there, and he's showing some of the sights of New England and his history there. And I guess, and then at a baseball game of all places, he said something like, well, there are a lot of sensitive issues around the history of baseball. And he said, like, love of baseball itself could be viewed as a microaggression.
Jesus.
And I didn't know what a microaggression was. And it took me a while to figure it out. It basically means you could be saying something innocently, correct? If I have this right, you basically could just be having a conversation, making a statement, and something you say inadvertently offends somebody else. Is that pretty? But now it's got a name. It's not called maybe being misguided, or maybe being rude if it's on purpose, or maybe speaking out of turn, or maybe putting your foot in your mouth. You didn't know all the facts, whatever, but now it's a microaggression, and you're the bad guy because you didn't know any better.
yeah, a microaggression does not even require intent,
No.
which is again where this whole worm has turned, where, it's like what they used to say about, pornography. You can't define it, but when you see it. So, when someone is saying something to hurt someone, or to, that's offensive, as we would classically describe it. But the classic one where I first started seeing this was the whole Merry Christmas thing. And I'm not talking about the war on Christmas. I'm just talking about in media and amongst in our entertainment, where it's like saying Merry Christmas to someone who wasn't Christian was all of a sudden offensive, right? So it's like, I have friends who were Jewish, and they would say Happy Hanukkah or Merry Christmas, and I would say you're doing it for that person. It's not, it's not a judgment. You're not, but they would consider that like a microaggression. That became offensive to wish someone a happy holiday that they didn't themselves practice. That was an early form of it. But really, what all this is, and it's control. It is control. It's used that way. I mean, there are definitely useful idiots that buy into this sort of, it's almost like a Maoist, rhetorical jail that they try to get you in. I don't know, but to me, like, I just don't believe people are actually offended about this. I call it like false offense, like fake offense. I mean, I'm sure some people can get offended about certain things, especially if someone's being offensive. But most of this stuff, at least in my own personal life, where I've seen it or heard it or read about it, it's theater. It's theater. It's an effort to squash speech by one person, from one person to another.
Right. Well, it's worse than that, because when it goes back to power, like Zeus mentioned Jordan Peterson, and I remember the way that he sort of broke into the zeitgeist. There's your word, Zeus. The way that he
zeitgeist.
That word.
Zeitgeist. The way that
zeitgeist.
The reason why he became sort of infamous was because he had to go before Congress, Canada's equivalent, because of this new law that they were passing. And he said, the problem with the law isn't that you're telling me what I can't say, it's you're telling me what I must say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because in Canada, they don't really have the same inalienable right to free speech that we do. And they have something close, probably more like England.
But do we even? I mean, we're
supposed to.
But it's under duress. Okay, we can say what we want, but we can lose our job. We can say what we want, but we can get shot by the cops. We can say what we want and, live a miserable life because we happen to live in a community where
but Zeus, the idea that the point he was trying to make is, it's one thing to try to change or police attitudes and to show people what might, but it's another thing to make me say something, to compel me to use a certain word in a certain context. And that was really his issue. And I think they've created a whole new dictionary. And if you don't abide by that dictionary, then it's at the very least a microaggression. It's just really what they're calling it now is hate speech.
Yeah.
Which is so over the top wrong.
Well,
I work in an environment where I do see a lot of people that identify as something other than what I grew up to identify them as. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. In some cases, I think it's a very real thing. My problem with, at least when we get into the gender politics stuff, I don't have a problem with people wanting those changes. It's a lot back to, fine, I'll say things the way you want to, but you got to understand, I'm from a different generation, and I will try. I'll try and honor what you ask, but your rage is unacceptable. Right. And generally speaking, I don't say that to a patient, but what I do say is, look, I'm old school, man. you know, and a man, I'm probably saying that to a woman, but my point being is
listen,
that,
man, you got.
but my point is that I tell them, look, I understand what you want. I respect it. I'll do my best, but I'm gonna slip up. It's just how I am. It doesn't mean I don't respect it. It just means I'm hardwired, you know? And I think that's where I get bothered, is that everybody's talking about tolerance, but they're intolerant
Yes,
of
absolutely.
your not adjusting quickly enough. Because this is a relatively new kind of thing in the social arena. I'm saying social arena now rather than zeitgeist. But it's a new thing.
It's also impossible to keep up with, period. Like, I mean,
By design.
By design. If you look at TikTok with everybody who's between the ages of, like, you know, I don't know what's fucking 15 and 25, and they're all dressed up in drag basically, and they're throwing out all these different terms, and there's no way that, unless you're already sort of crate trained to it, there's no way that you would ever be able to figure it out if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how what effect it's gonna have in the future.
They're fucked.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of getting a little bit off subject, but our kids are our kids, like my kids' ages. Not so much yours, Jack. They're probably.
I got two young ones too, so.
Yeah, but they're gonna be, you know, with their brothers. Their brothers are gonna kind of reinforce a lot of what you think. But the thing about it, for me, is that we're training our children to be offended and hurt by everything, and not take their lumps. Like, man, whew.
It's that, but we're also training them to be obedient, and that's the dangerous part. And compliant. And I agree with you, Zeus. I mean, that gets to the whole, like, you know, snowflake notion and all, and I think that's a part of it. But really, you know, there's dozens and hundreds of examples of this, where when you can define a term, and let's say hate speech, right? So hate speech, when it was first ever really talked about in a legal sense, not just as a phrase, but in a legal sense, meant one thing. And now, if you are against having drop boxes unmonitored in a neighborhood 3 weeks before an election, that's, you know, and you talk about that's hate speech now, right? So it's like, you take a word, you define it, you shift the definition to something else, but you keep the original negative connotation. Racism is another perfect example of this, where we all know what a racist is, what being racist is, racism, all that stuff.
But see, that, if you look at that word, if I'm not mistaken, racism doesn't mean like how we use it. Racial is, my understanding, is the term that actually means like saying something that's negative towards a race. Racism is like, it's
believing one race is better than another race.
Do you see do you see the difference I'm pointing out there?
The term racial could be used in a more innocent, broader context.
Okay, so it is the other way around. Fine. That's good.
No. Racial as an adjective could be used to describe a subject you're talking about. We're going to be talking about racial issues today. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But going back to what Mike was saying about hate speech, I think what's lost on a lot of people, that we've all kind of got caught up in, hate speech should be banned. There is no constitutional acknowledgement of anything called hate speech existing in this country at all. It doesn't exist. The ACLU actually defended the Nazis of Illinois, and it set the standard, and it's been affirmed since then. Hate speech, technically, you could say something's hate speech because it's mean or even racist, downright terrible, but it's still protected speech. it's not to be censored. It's
And
it's
Yeah,
to
the
be
answer is to counter it in the
Yes.
public square or to the person, and win the debate, or
Right.
put them in their place. And
Right.
so by
let that person stand out on their own island as being ignorant.
exactly. I
And
mean
they'll be judged accordingly. But you don't ban them, and you don't censor them, and you don't try to lock them up for using even the wrong. And if you equate what we both, we can all sort of agree on what we think an example of hate speech would be. Like if you just in terms of the word hate in there, right? It's not an acknowledged bannable language, but I mean, if somebody says, I hate blank people, okay, that's hateful speech, right? But if somebody uses the wrong gendered terminology or talks, I mean, come on.
That's what I'm saying. Once you set the definition, and once it becomes codified in the law, and there's laws against it, and then the purveyors of this ideology start shifting the goalpost to what that term means, and yet the punishment for it remains the same. This is where you get into manipulation of population,
goes into power,
thought control, power, all that other stuff. And it's so blatant, it's so obvious. But
there's a really good sci-fi book.
Yeah, and on that subject, real quick, Mike, another thing that talks about power and what's being allowed to be said and not said is this juicy new term called misinformation.
Yeah.
That's the scariest.
We used to just call that lies.
No, but that's the scariest word, I think, in the English language right now. It justifies.
And disinformation.
Oh, no. There's another one. Dehumanization is a big one now, too.
Yeah.
So two things. First of all, there's a great, it's a sci-fi book by this guy named Neil Stephenson called Snow Crash. And it talks about like how powerful language is. Like if you were to take the Bible and just move one word to the right, you could change an immense amount of, you could change the thought process from there out. It's just that simple. The pen is mightier than the sword, So check that one out. It's called Snow Crash. It's a fantastic book. Really looks into language, but it reads like a Japanese animation. So it's a really fun read, and very intelligent. The other thing I wanted to talk about is, to a degree, I think this is falling back to our dislike of social media to a certain degree, because I think part of this, if we want to allow for some of the outrage, one thing we have to look at is tonality. Like if I'm on the unit and I've got a male to female and I go, him, it's different than if I go, oh, just go ask him. You know what I mean? That's the hate, the tone, the inflection, how you say it is a huge part of how it's perceived. And that's one of the reasons why when I make a mistake on the unit, and I often apologize afterwards, but when I make a mistake, the tone in which I say it and how my whole body language, all that's involved are important. I mean, when you watch any movie about the 50s or, where the racism is just blatant and they say harsh words with a harsh tone, it's different. Yeah, and I blame
I don't have to see a movie. I remember it. Well, no, I remember hearing it firsthand.
I heard it from my dad and my grandfather, all the time. They, not like bad, not the bad words, but a them here or a they there, like it was offensive to me. But it's important that we remember how you say things is also involved in all this. And I think that's where we have to blame social media, because I've made this complaint many times that you'll send a text to somebody and for whatever reason it's all caps. Oh shit, do the floodgates open? Why are you yelling at me about this? It's like, dude, I accidentally hit the caps lock. So social media doesn't allow for tone and inflection and all that. And I think that maybe these younger people are being trained to see words as harsher than they are because they don't hear the tone behind it. Does that make any sense to you guys, or am I?
No, I think you're right, but I don't know that that is for the younger generations. I think we perceive things that way. I think for
No, what I'm saying is they're trained to not have tone in a lot of their communication. So,
well, I don't know if they're trained not to. I think the communication they use lacks it.
right. Well,
You know, social media. But I
Fair
don't
enough.
think I think for a big degree for a lot of people, it is the words, man. You say certain words and people, hey, the room gets quiet. You know what I mean? That's frightening. You know, you look at another word, like I was saying, you know, besides hate speech or racism, terrorists. Like, I remember, I'm old enough to remember when terrorists were people that bombed stuff, right? Now it's like, you be a terrorist for just disagreeing with the administration or something. I mean, it's just completely absurd. Again, it's this taking of the language and shifting it, and it is a control thing, and it does get people to watch what they say, and it's used as a cudgel against people that aren't in the know of the newspeak, which is not an accident that Orwell chose that word, you know. And you have an ideology that's hell-bent on erasing the past, erasing history, making everything the present. So what better way to cut off the older generation than to turn their language, as you said, Zeus, which is just like, hey man, this is, I can't remember how you put it, but you're like, this is the way I talk or whatever.
yeah, I'm just like,
to make that a
I'm old
crime.
school. Yeah.
You're old school, right? So being old school becomes a crime. Like you better zip it up. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right. It's like Logan's Run. We're going to get the jewels in our hand and we're going to go see if we live or die because we're not,
right,
you know, part of the youth.
right. And the other thing is there's certain words, like one of the things that you sent out, Zeus, you know, there's words on there like tribe, like being part of a tribe, crazy, which I get, whatever. Lame, saying something is dumb. There's certain, again, this is communication, man. This is like, you know, I've got a phone that's got a pregnant guy emoji on it right now, right? And I can't say tribe, or I mean, I'm just saying, when you start outlawing words, you are outlawing thought, because there's certain words that are just the perfect word for a certain situation.
We got to look at this from a Ray Bradbury standpoint and say that this is Fahrenheit 451, 100%. You know?
I think it's definitely very 1984 with the news, like Mike was saying. I mean,
it's a little bit of all the books you read. Animal Farm, I can see a little bit of that in there.
Yeah, yeah, Brave New World.
And I don't think, again, this isn't something where we need to be storming machine gun nests or anything. I think that it's just, don't do it. Like, just don't kowtow. Oh, there's another word. Don't kowtow to, don't bend the knee. You know, I mean, just do what you're doing. And again, not in a spiteful, like, I don't care, you know, if you don't like this, I'm going to say it anyway. I mean, if I'm in a situation and I know, like, if I have a friend who doesn't like to talk about politics because they find it distasteful, I don't talk about politics around them. It's very simple, you know. It's called basic decency. But if there's someone that says that I can't refer to my mom and dad, or, you know, I can't define what a woman is or something, it's like, I don't have to buy that. I have station 2. I have my own 2 feet. I take up space on this planet. I have my own brain. I don't have to make a big deal about making someone else know they're wrong. I can just not engage them in that and go about my day. I don't have to make a big stinking deal about it like they do.
Well, and they're like adding layers. They're adding layers to it of, not only are you like whatever you choose to call yourself. But then there's also this, like, I identify as, and the unfair part about that is I don't know.
Yeah, how are we supposed to know? Wear a shirt and whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I don't understand. And this is something that may be generational. I hope not, because if we lose this, we're totally screwed. But I really, I mean, honestly, throughout my whole life, it's nothing new. I rarely give a flying shit what people think about me, about a lot of things. Now, do I want to, like, not look like a slob? Do I want to lose some weight? Do I feel good when I have, like, this new flashy car as opposed to some, like, you know, hoopty or whatever, hoopty, whatever. That's a Baltimore term, I think. But of course, right? And we're all human. But in the grand scheme of things, I've never cared. And that's not from, like, some major, you know, punk ethic or whatever. It's just, I just don't care. And I never understood people that internalize all this stuff, all this incoming that they get from people to the degree they do. I don't know if it's confidence. I don't know what, but I'm always suspicious of people that are feel that they're being microaggressed or whatever. I'm like, dude, I don't know how you wake up. How do you get out of bed in the morning, man?
No,
I mean, being human, it's like getting into the ring every fucking day. Like, you are taking, like, how do you get through your day being that fragile? You know, I don't get it.
No, you kind of just want to grab them and call them a big pussy.
Oh, no. We don't use that word.
Again, and I'm not saying this from, like, some hyper masculine. I'm not a hyper masculine dude. I'm not trying to be, like, you know, belittle anyone. I know some people are more sensitive than others. I mean, I'm very sensitive about certain things. But
That's
I mean,
the thing. We're supposed
man,
to be getting stronger, not weaker. We're supposed to be
develop
evolving.
some calluses or something. Like, you know, don't be so
Worried about, well, that's another thing. That's another thing. They were actually back on the, as far as words go, they're equating words with violence.
Yes.
Oh, verbal violence or something like that.
No. When did words become I thought smacking somebody in the face was violence.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I can tell you
Silence.
when. I can tell you
Silence
when
is
words became
violence.
violent. Maudib. It's a Dune reference.
I
Never
know.
mind.
Everybody gets the Dune reference.
But I'm saying, dude, Jack, to your point, and now silence is violence. Like, not saying something is violence. It's like, so what is violence? I mean, again, they're defining, it's changing the definition of violence. And I just reject that. And I can reject it. I don't have to accept that. And it is a play. It is a power play. It is what it is. And a lot of this stuff, like when I say that, I really feel that a lot of people aren't actually offended. And again, this is just my own experience, anecdotal, whatever. But most of the people, I mean, when I say most, I mean all of the people that I know that espouse this philosophy are all upper class. Like, when I say upper class, I'm like fairly well-off white people that live in nice houses. So it's almost like this Munchausen thing going on. I don't know what it is, where they need to feel this pain to because they have some guilt. I don't know what it is, but like the sign behind me, which is just a joke, but I pass houses where they've got this with the BLM sign and the, you know, the transgender flag and the rainbow flag, and but it's like you can't even see the house anymore. It's like a parody of you know, what's that word? Virtue signaling to like this crazy degree. And I'm just like, you live in a house that cost $1 million and there's only 2 people living there. You know, what's with the signs? You know, what actually are you doing to, you know, make the world a better place, what have you?
We could probably do it.
That's a little bit of a tangent and a little bit of an anecdote, but
it makes sense. I mean, we could probably do a Venn diagram on this, or one of those, you know, those like where the serial, you know, where they're trying to find out who the serial killer is, and they got the strings going from here to there and there. Because this could also be in that cancel culture kind of vibe, like, you know, you own that $1 million house, you're probably an executive at the company you work for. If you don't you know, sign on to whatever they're telling you got to sign on to, you're going to lose that big house. It's gonna track you home.
It goes,
Like,
no, white guilt goes back a long time. There's been books written about it. I think one author was named Shelby Steele, who's an African-American man. He wrote a book called White Guilt, and it really had to do with white liberalism. And I think that's been going on for a while, since the civil rights movement. And now it's extended to the rainbow flag and, you know, to every other, you know, cause that the wealthy white elite can get behind to kind of show that they're down with the people. And it maybe it is a form of Munchausen, Mike. I don't know.
like
I don't know.
social Munchausen or something.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, how guilty can you feel while living in that $1 million mansion? I mean, like what are you really doing? You're putting up, you feel so bad you're going to hang a flag on your house? Like,
Well, that's what I mean. It's like this bumper sticker activism, right? So it's like, you know, what about just being a decent, good person and treating all of God's creatures in your presence with compassion and respect and everything else? And I don't need to get up on a soapbox and scream about it, and I don't need to put a dumb sign in my yard or whatever. And I'm certainly not going to go around and browbeat other people who have an opinion about something that's different than mine and try to equate them to being some sort of like monster or what. I mean, it's such sick manipulation of the language. It's offensive, to be honest with you.
Well, and you know,
what do they call that? What do they call
it?
We have a term for that too, Mike, and it's a good term. It's called virtue signaling.
It's virtue signaling. Yes, exactly.
And I gotta say, I like that we're going down a path, because I didn't want to make this about so much the gender stuff and all that. I like that we're going down
Just
this
a flare up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a piece of it. But I mean, like, this like attack on language, it's almost like, you know, coming from a medical standpoint, it's almost like a virus. It's like the body being society is it's like cancerous. It's affecting the whole structure of our society. When I still will argue that when I walk down the street, it's the nod, you know, people still get along. So much of this is just us being told how we're supposed to talk to each other. And like you said, Mike, I don't think most of us give a shit. You know what? I'll say all day long, I'm always like, what's up, my brother? Hey, brother. And I'm saying that to everybody, every race, creed, or color, or boss, you know, like it doesn't register in my head, these things.
Well, yeah, and that's just it. If you're being excessive, like if you're being friendly, if you're a friendly person, then good for you. Maybe that'll bounce back to you. People will be nicer to you too. But even if you're not a friendly, even like I don't walk around saying hi to everybody, you know, and I just don't. You know, but I'm still not going out of my
angry grandpa.
No, I'm not going out of my way to be rude.
Get off my lawn!
No,
Right.
If somebody makes eye contact with me, I'll give them a nod, or I'll say, hey, how are you? You know what I mean? But other than that, I'm just trying to get through my day in this crazy world, and I'd rather have people be nicer to me than not. So I try to be, you know, I'm not going to go up to them and give them a hug or anything, is my point. You know what I mean? Like,
here's the sad thing, and we've seen this. It's already started. I mean, it's been going on, but to various degrees. But this stuff this mentality and this philosophy and way of being, it ends up eating itself, because you can never be virtuous enough. It is a scale, and the people who buy into this philosophy will end up eating each other, right, in the same aquarium. It's
screw up too. They're going to screw up.
They're going to screw up. They're going to say something wrong. And the one that's this whole dichotomy, this one fascinates me. And not that we have to get into the gender stuff, because it's kind of whatever. It's kind of boring at this point. But is the term TERF? Are you familiar with this, Jack? Trans exclusionary radical feminist.
Yes, it's a feminist that actually is so feminist that being a woman means something.
Yes, and this term, like trans exclusionary radical feminist. So I'm like, I'm old enough to remember when we called these people feminists, right? But again, it's this weird thing, and to me, it's almost like I don't even like. I'm just going to hang back. Like I don't even know where I fit into this argument. I mean, honestly, I support the TERFs because I growing up when we did, I'm definitely the word feminist and feminism is loaded, but I definitely have always considered myself to be a feminist to a degree. I mean, I definitely believe in equal rights, very basic, but because I believe in the Constitution and all people are created equal and all that stuff. But I definitely have some feminist beliefs and things like that. So to hear these people called like, radical for believing that they should be able to like, play on a team and not have to compete against a biological male or something and all of a sudden that's like outrageous.
Right.
It's amazing.
Or maybe have a safe space like the women's bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's I don't look, here's the whole thing. Like I said this to my wife, we were talking about this a few months ago. I love women. Like, I mean, I love my wife, but I just love women in general. I think they're beautiful, fantastic beings. Like I'm happy to be a guy. I'm happy that God put women on the planet. They're amazing. They're everything that men aren't. And that's fantastic. And so to say like to try to erase that, and whatever that is, being a woman is, again, it's like everything that people who subscribe to this philosophy, this like super far radical leftist Marxist philosophy, everything they touch, they destroy, right? It's like, don't destroy women. Like, don't the concept of what a woman is, like, let them, can they play on their own sports team? Can they have their own bathrooms? Like, can we like acknowledge what a woman is and not have it be like some crazy political thing to help the 1/100000th of a percent of people out there that have this gender dysphoria or whatever their deal is. I don't even care. It's like good for them, but why does it always involve something being taken away from everyone else? Where did that start? Why can't things coexist anyway? What, I'm going off on a tangent, but
no, it's
anyway.
a good tangent. It's a good tangent, but
this subject requires some tangents, actually.
Yeah. I'm just saying, women are awesome. It's like, and we have a Supreme Court justice that just got confirmed that can't even define what a woman is.
Right.
That is
the judge.
That is
judge whether they're a woman or not.
Let me say that is crazy and psychotic.
It's crazy, and worse than that, Mike. It's lame.
Oh, you guys, we're gonna get canceled.
I just feel like.
Oh yeah. Well, now we're gonna hear from the peanut gallery.
We need to have a powwow and get to the bottom of this.
Actually, that one, Jack. Do you remember back in the day the powwow conversation with Jessica?
No, I don't. But it probably shouldn't be repeated on the show.
It's a great story. Powwow is actually kind of offensive, though. That one I get.
Here's the thing that drives me crazy
too. Offensive. It's not offensive unless, why? Because it's cultural appropriation. Is that the idea? That
a little bit, yeah. That one I can get behind. But that one I don't mind.
But can someone define cultural appropriation? I'm not trying to steal anyone's culture. It's like, look, it's a melting pot. This country, the Native Americans were already here. We came here, wreaked havoc, whatever. More people came over from Europe. Everyone's coming up from South America. It is a melting pot. We celebrate Cinco de Mayo. I love Frankfurters. You can go and I can get sushi in my neighborhood. I love sushi. It's like, whatever. My daughter dressed up as Moana. Isn't that diversity? Like that we can all just kind of like put all this stuff together. I mean,
Hey,
cultural
to quote the
appropriation,
great
are you
Bill
kidding me?
Pullman from the should have gotten an Oscar nominated movie Independence Day.
Best picture,
When
man.
the aliens fucking come, we're all Earthlings.
Yes. That was one of the things that was great at that movie. That's why everyone cries at the end, man. Like Randy Quaid's going up in the thing, and Bill Pullman's like, "Ow." And then people are radioing in from all over the world and stuff. We need a good alien.
How
invasion.
often do you get to pull a Bill Pullman ID4, because that's what I call it,
Yeah.
reference, and have it be somewhat appropriate? It was a great fucking speech for, by today's standards, awful movie.
Yeah. It was a popcorn movie, man. It was good for what it was.
It was a fun popcorn movie.
It was good for what it was.
Well, so listen, guys. God, we could do this I could actually go on for a while with this, but as you guys know, and I think we're gonna have to cancel this. We're gonna have to go out on this one because I think we only have one Zoom thing that can be going on at the same time.
Well, I was going to say, I think for what we were talking about wanting to do, I think we did
It was
it.
great.
Yeah, I think we've been on for a little while, boy.
All right. So what I want to say is to all the people that listen to the end, I'm going to be starting a new podcast with some of the girls that were on before. Dana, Desiree.
Some of the dames that were on previous podcasts.
You know, those chicks.
The chicks.
So it's going to be Dana, Desiree, and Mary's not going to be on tonight, but we're going to start it tonight. We're going to do like a pilot episode, just kind of do a bios on each other. And I like the name for it. I think you guys, if I didn't tell you guys already, we're going to call it the nurses RN, which I think is sketchy. Nice. And you'll like the logo that we're going to come up with. I think it's really nice. And I've got a really good artist that I know that's going to do a new one for our show as well. That Wizard of Oz kind of vibe that I was telling you about.
And so this was the crew that we had on episode 62.
Yeah.
Talking about Redonda Vault.
Also, for all the listeners out there, we're planning somewhat of an event on either May 12th or May 13th. We'll make it more clear on all our social media, you know, the thing that's destroying society. About Redonda Vault on the sentencing. There's going to be a Million Nurse March on the 13th. We might do it on the 12th, or the Million Nurse March is on the 12th. I'm sorry. But Redonda Vaught's sentencing is on the 13th. So we haven't decided which day we're going to do it on, but I'm going to try and get people to come up to Patriots and make kind of a shindig out of it. So we'll see what happens.
So if Friends of Zeus is Happy Days, then your new nurse podcast is sort of like Journey Loves Chachi.
Oh no, I was going to go Mork and Mindy.
Oh, okay.
Mork and three Mindys.
It's a spinoff. Okay.
Wait a minute. What about Laverne and Shirley? That sounds more like it.
Laverne and Shirley.
That's just two dames.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
All right, Jack.
That's enough of you plugging your other podcast. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you all next week. Peace.
All right.
Take care, guys.
See you guys. I'm gonna hop in.
But when you start trying to legislate morality, you've got a problem. You know, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked in the past. It won't work in the future.
Yeah, but if anything goes, there's got to be some sense of responsibility, don't you think?
There's a difference between responsibility and adherence to dogma. When the dogma becomes legislation, that's when you have the danger.